Welcome back. Today, we're diving deep into a piece of Indian tax law that honestly causes a lot of headaches for businesses. We're talking about Section 94B. We're going to zoom in on one single, really powerful clause, a proviso, to separate a very common myth from the actual legal reality.
So, let me ask you the big question, the one that probably keeps CFOs up at night. If your company in India gets a loan from an Indian bank, but your parent company overseas provides a guarantee, could that simple act of support all of a sudden trigger a huge tax problem, a massive disallowance of your interest deduction?
And this isn't just some theoretical worry. This fear is so real and so widespread that it's led to major legal battles, like the Siemens Gamesa case, which even challenged the constitutionality of this whole thing in the Madras High Court. For companies, the stakes are absolutely massive. We're talking about potentially millions in tax deductions on the line.
Okay, so to really understand what's going on, we have to rewind a bit. We need to look at the problem this law was designed to solve in the first place. Why was Section 94B even written? Believe me, its original purpose is the key to unlocking this entire puzzle.
So the law is aimed at a strategy called thin capitalization. Just picture a big multinational company. It can fund its Indian subsidiary in two ways, with equity, where profits go back as dividends, or with debt, where profits go back as interest payments. Now, since interest is tax deductible but dividends aren't, there's a huge incentive to just load up the Indian company with debt from a foreign parent. This thins out the Indian company's capital, shrinks its taxable profits, and shifts all that money right out of the country.
And the road to this law really followed global trends. You had cases in India like Besix Cure Dabhol, which had a mind-boggling 248-to-1 debt-to-equity ratio that showed the old rules just weren't cutting it. Then the OECD's big project on base erosion and profit shifting, you've probably heard of it as BEPS, created a global framework to stop this kind of thing. So India's Section 94B, introduced in 2017, was basically its answer to that global call to action.
Okay, so the law is clearly about cross-border debt, right? But then we get to the source of all the confusion, a tiny but incredibly powerful clause called a proviso. And this, my friends, is where the myth begins.
This right here is the heart of the conflict. The myth says that this proviso is like a secret superweapon that expands the law to cover domestic loans, just as long as a foreign relative company guarantees it. But the reality? Well, it's a lot more specific. The proviso does one very particular thing. It can change who the lender is considered to be, but it doesn't change the fundamental rules of the game.
So let's do it. Let's become legal detectives for the next few minutes and actually read the fine print. We're going to look at the law itself, some core legal principles, and even what the government itself has said to uncover the truth.
Let's start with the main event, Section 94B1. It lays out 3 conditions before any interest disallowance can even happen. The first 2 are pretty straightforward, but that third one, that one is the absolute key to everything. The debt must be issued by a non-resident who is also a related company or an associated enterprise. This is the bedrock. If the lender is a resident of India, the main rule just doesn't apply, period.
So, what in the world does a proviso actually do? Okay, think of the main law as the rulebook for a board game. A proviso is like a special card you draw that says, in this one specific situation, do this instead. It can't introduce a totally new game. It can only tweak a move within the existing rules. It's engrafted onto the main section, which basically means it's a part of it. It can't go off on its own and rewrite the rulebook.
And hey, this isn't just my opinion. It's a core legal principle. This quote from Lord Watson, which has been cited by India's own Supreme Court, is crystal clear. You simply cannot use a proviso to sneak in a major new rule that wasn't already in the main part of the law to begin with.
And just to hammer the point home, another top legal authority, Maxwell, says the exact same thing. A proviso lives and dies within the boundaries, the ambit, of the section it's attached to. So the crucial takeaway here is, since the main section is all about non-resident lenders, the proviso is stuck in that same world too.
We can also just look at the government's own stated purpose. In the official documents explaining the law, the goal was, and I quote, to counter cross-border shifting of profit. Now think about it. If you have a loan from an Indian lender to an Indian borrower, where's the cross-border profit shifting? It doesn't exist. Applying the law here would completely contradict its own reason for being.
Now here's a really great clue that comes from a 2020 amendment. It turns out the law had an unintended side effect. Since Indian branches of foreign banks are technically considered non-resident, their loans were getting caught by Section 94B. So the government had to add a whole new clause just to exclude them. Think about what that implies. This very specific fix was only needed because the non-resident status is the absolute trigger. If the myth were true that any guaranteed loan was covered, they would have needed a much, much bigger fix. This little amendment basically proves the case.
So, after looking at the text of the law, the legal principles, the original intent, and even the legislative history, we can finally reach a clear, decisive verdict on loans taken from Indian lenders.
Myth busted. The proviso's power is limited. All it really does is say, hey, if a non-resident lender is guaranteed by a foreign parent, we're going to treat that loan as if it came directly from the parent. It just relabels the lender. It never ever gets rid of that first primary condition that the lender has to be a non-resident to begin with.
This simple table really makes it all perfectly clear. If your lender is a non-resident related company, then yes, the law applies. But if your lender is a resident of India, it simply does not matter one bit whether there's a foreign guarantee or not. The answer is a clear no. The disallowance is not triggered.
So let's just quickly recap the crucial takeaways. First, the non-resident status of the lender is the absolute trigger. Second, a proviso only modifies its main rule. It can't expand it into something new. Third, and this is the big one for most people, a foreign guarantee on a domestic loan does not trigger this rule. And finally, always remember the why. This law is about stopping cross-border profit shifting, not about penalizing normal domestic financing deals.
You know, the fear around Section 94B really shows how just one misunderstanding of the legal fine print can lead to flawed business strategies and a whole lot of unnecessary stress. And that leaves us with one last important question. Now that we've demystified this complex rule, what other widely held tax myths might be quietly shaping your most critical business decisions?